talk facilitation, Jerry.
Yeah. Hey, I put the fun in dysfunction, man.
Everything in facilitation is designed to reduce dysfunction
and increase consensus. Does my head look fat? I'm backing up now. Whoa, dude. That was a facilitation fail.
Consensus is?
I can live with it and support it. That's the thing I'm going to get a tattoo of right there.
Here we go. Facilitation straight talk.
Boom.
Boom.
We're going to make a blooper reel someday.
All right, here we go.
All right.
No, seriously, this time, don't get me laughing. Okay, hey, welcome back, everybody. You can't start with the laughing. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to do something different in this video. Some of our mentors have been saying, don't just sell facilitation like you guys have been doing. Sell yourselves. Talk a little bit about yourself. So we got the idea to interview one another. And Aaron, because he's the mastermind of this thing, has to go first. Before we even start, I want to address something that people have been telling me about the videos. The bromance between me and Aaron is a real thing. That's actually true. Aaron, I love you, brother. And I wouldn't do this with anybody but you. And people have heard that before. We couldn't be doing this if we weren't working with one another. But, man, I do care about you so much. Before we get into the serious stuff, let's answer what the fans really want to know. Who is that beautiful young lady that was at the end of our last video, brother?
All right, so that is my granddaughter, Zoe. And she literally is the light of my life and the reason I do what I do.
Boom.
Yes. Yeah, that's it, man. That's a good short answer. We love Zoe. She's beautiful. She's like the star of the show now. Boom, right? Okay, so let's start with a really easy one. What does facilitation mean to you? People have been watching us. They can see the passion and the way we talk in the videos. They can see the passion when we teach the course. But tell the people that haven't seen us face-to-face in real time, what does facilitation mean to you?
All right, Jerry, let's do this. So I usually say at some point in our course, with 29 years in uniform, that I rated facilitation training within the top 5 trainings that I received while in uniform. And I only got the training like 5 years before I retired. But the training, the skills, they were immediately pertinent both to my professional and personal life. And we've said it multiple times, across these videos, but I received a ton of leadership training and a lifetime worth of process, workflow, checklists. But what I did not receive as a leader was how do you effectively lead a group of people through process? And without being overly dramatic here, what does facilitation mean to me? Everyone wants purpose and value in their life, right? So for 29 years, it was service in the United States Marine Corps. But now my why is exporting these valuable facilitation skills to as many people as I can. Your meetings do not have to suck. Your working groups and conferences don't have to cause you frustration. There is a better way.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. And I knew you'd give one. I thought you were going to lead with facilitation means I get to hang out with Jerry and eat fish tacos. But okay, good to go. That's strong too.
No, that's the side benefit, man.
I mean, yeah. So talk a little bit about how having facilitation skills, you mentioned before you got them towards the end of your career. How did that change your leadership style and the way that you handled situations?
Sure, good question, Jerry. Even before facilitation training, I always kind of viewed myself as an open and approachable leader. But after facilitation training, I think the key skill that I tried to emphasize was active listening. Sometimes leaders need to solve problems, but other times they just need to sit there and lend an ear. As you remember, we had a couch in our office in the Pentagon, which after I left, you named it the Truth Couch. But I can't count the number of times that I had people, both junior and very senior in the organization, come in, close the door, sit down on that couch and just talk or vent or, ask about problems they were having, whatever it was. I think the key piece here is not only was it healthy for them to get that off their chest and have somebody willing to listen, but it was also healthy for the organization because it allowed me to have better situational awareness of what was going on and then apply my leadership at the different points where it was needed, where if that I wasn't approachable and I didn't sit there and listen, that never would have happened.
Yeah, that's excellent, man. I hope that couch is still there, and if it could tell stories, the stories it could tell. Wow. But I hear you. I think, those active listening skills are incredibly important. This next question I couldn't wait to ask because I know it's going to be a funny story. And even though I've heard it before, I want to hear it again. Tell the listeners, what's your most epic facilitation success?
So you thought that was going to be an easy question to answer. It's actually kind of a tough one for me because, I've been doing this for a while, and so I've seen lots of success. But I'll say this, the high point for me with facilitation was successfully executing O2XX modernization, which was essentially an enterprise-wide effort to modernize intelligence military occupational specialties. It was a 1.5 year effort with multiple stakeholders facing very complex problems. And at times during that, we would have a room full of 100 people that we were trying to facilitate. So it stretched my facilitation skills to the max. They were all senior people, they were passionate, and of course, they were opinionated. And, to be honest, there were moments where I was like, is this really going to come all together at the end? But we did it. We used Marine Corps processes with facilitation as a foundation underneath it. And we achieved in what my opinion has not been achieved before, at least at that level of consensus and buy-in that we got from everyone involved.
Tell the group about your greatest fail, because this is going to be funny. I'm looking forward to this one too.
Well, I use lots of different facilitation fails during the training because I think not that we want to fail, but we learn a lot from every single failure. The biggest facilitation fail, I'll go back to O2XX modernization, where I didn't properly plan on how to capture the input from that session and close it out. And so during O2XX modernization, we were doing problem framing, and we spent an entire week trying to figure out what all the problems were with Marine Corps Intel. And so those of you that know .mil-PF, doctrine, organization, training, etc., we had gigantic white easel paper filling up an entire wall of this open room. And we had all kind of problems up there. Literally, it was thousands and thousands of stickies. And so while that was great, we had a lot of problems. What I didn't plan for was how to capture it at the end. And so when I pulled them all down off the wall and went back to work the next day, I'm like, how am I going to capture all these? And so literally, I had to task a chief warrant officer and a mass sergeant to put those stickies into a spreadsheet with some kind of, organization to it. And it took them weeks. And, I always like to joke, I think they had a voodoo doll of me and they were jamming it every day of those 2 weeks because I didn't properly plan. So I would say that was a big facilitation fail. I learned from that.
Yeah, that might be why you have sciatica problems now, right?
Yeah, that's probably true.
You should probably apologize to Ashley right here now because I know he's going to watch this video.
If he watches the video, sure.
Yeah, he's the best. Tell us some stories about how you use different techniques to handle dysfunction. Like we talked about in the course, people are dysfunctional. Talk about some of the techniques you learned in the training or over the years of experience doing facilitation where you used your techniques to handle that dysfunction.
Sure, I have a lot of stories about dysfunction, but I'll just ping up on one. We had a member in one of the very first sessions that I facilitated that was opinionated, was a broken record, was a negative Nancy or Doubting Thomas, would always look back and say, well, it didn't work last time, why is it going to work this time? And the very first session that I did with the group, it got to the point, it was only an hour-long meeting, but it got to the point that every time he opened his mouth, you could physically see the reaction in the room of like people cringing and just wanting to leave the room. So I knew I couldn't let him continue acting that way and showing that kind of dysfunction in future sessions. So what I did, like we recommend in the course, is I did an intervention in between sessions. And I sat down with them. And, in the CI world, we call this ego up. But I basically just said, hey, brother, you're a plank owner in this organization. You know where all the skeletons are buried. Like, I need you on my team. I need you to help me get members to participate. And it was amazing. The very next session, when he rolled in, people are looking around the room. When he opened his mouth, it was concise, it was pertinent. It really changed the way that set of facilitated sessions went.
Yeah, I think that's a huge skill we talked about in the course, that 1v1 conflict resolution and how to do that. And it sounds like that's an story of how you did that. We talk a lot about guerrilla facilitation as well. And this is one of my favorite subjects in the course. Can you talk about how, when you're not the leader of the group, you can still use these techniques while you're just a face in the crowd? Tell a story about how you were a guerrilla facilitator and use those techniques.
Sure. I think I had many examples of this because, more often than not, you're probably not the one that's in charge of the meeting. So when you go to that meeting and all of a sudden, it goes off the rails and it's going downhill and people are being dysfunctional or they like to hear themselves talk. And so they're dominating the conversation. How do you get in there? I would say what I found is each meeting and situation was different. So as a facilitator, I would roll into that meeting, and if I needed to talk to the leadership about purpose and product and agendas, I would, usually outside of the meeting. If it had to do with dysfunctional people in the room, I would usually approach them on a break and just say, hey, man, I see that you're frustrated or you're angry, or, and try to pull it out of them and try to flip them on my own without even going to the leadership to try to do that. That's why we highly promote, I think, facilitation. Even if you're a junior member, you can use these skills in the group, not only being a functional member in the group, but also helping out everyone around you stay on track.
I also think that neutrality is a really big part of our course, and I think is something that we as leaders struggle with. Talk about any problems you've had with maintaining your neutrality when you're doing facilitation.
I think neutrality is a very important subject for facilitation. I can remember when I went through my very first facilitation training and I heard the subject of neutrality, I was like, oh, that's not going to work in government military environments. But then I asked the instructor a few questions, and then I went back and started using facilitation skills in uniform, and I realized how critical it was. Because if the crowd thinks that you're manipulating them or steering them or not giving them all a voice, they'll shut down on you, because that's like every other conference or working group or meeting they've been in, right? Some
Right.
leader has some kind of agenda and drives them towards that end state. So I found there have been times where I had to bite my tongue and stomp my foot because I knew, there's something I wanted to say, but I didn't do it. Or, in extreme cases, we have the technique where it's just changing of hats, where I say, hey, I'm taking off my facilitator hat. I'm putting on my Master Guns hat, or whatever your hat happens to be. Say your quick statement, whatever it is, and then put it back on. But honestly, I've used that very sparingly over the years. It just wasn't necessary.
Hey, we have a lot of fun in the class. Obviously, we have a lot of fun hanging out with you and I, but I think the participants have fun too. So what's your favorite part about teaching the course, Aaron?
Oh, my favorite part about teaching the course, I would have to say it's the dysfunction class, right? You say, let's put the fun in dysfunction, but that's probably that class and its material and how to deal with dysfunction like that is probably the most foreign to people that come through facilitation training. You may have plenty of other, agile training or process training, but from my experience, when you go through that training, nobody tells you, okay, if you have a Loudmouth or you have the Storyteller, how do you deal with it on the spot? And what are your mitigation strategies, in between sessions? And so I've found the students come alive when you go through the dysfunction class and they really get into it and they all understand it. They're like, oh yeah, I can remember that person, or I used to be that person in that last meeting. So I think you really give them useful skills that they can turn around and use in their environments.
All right, so final question. We'll finish the video on this. What will you say to people who are interested in getting the type of facilitation skills that we've been talking about in this video? What would you tell them?
So what's funny, Jerry? You and I have several different facilitation pitches, depending on the audience who we're talking to. And sometimes we rack and stack them one on top of each other, especially like when new people walk into the room. I would just say this: facilitation skills can be added to any leader's toolkit. So it doesn't matter if you're in uniform or out. It doesn't matter if you're junior or senior. These skills are applicable to every leader, regardless of where you're at, to improve the meetings around you. And especially if you're senior and in charge, getting all your members buy-in, get their voice, get to consensus, get their buy-in to decisions, that's invaluable. You can't put a price on that.
Yeah, I agree with it. Agree with that 100%. I hope that the listeners have seen the passion you have for this, and it comes right out with everything you've just said. All right, everybody, remember to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and reach out to us. We may be bringing a training course to somewhere near you soon. Boom.
Boom.
Oh, you hit me with a double gun.
I had to change it up a little bit.
Boom.
There you go.